Welcome to the podcast, Rewind, Pause, Play with the UTS Women's Mentoring Group.
The purpose of the UTS Women's Mentoring Group is to provide opportunities for women of UTS to develop skills that focus on personal growth and leadership in a nurturing environment, promoting learning, mentoring, and support for career advancement initiatives.
As UTS continues to grow, we have more employees in different time zones, on various shifts, and of course with busy schedules. We decided to start this podcast so we could reach more of our employees on any day and at any time that's convenient to them.
Our goal is to increase the conversation about an array of topics with a diverse group of employees across our entire organization.
Whether it's walking on the treadmill, commuting to and from work, or maybe on your couch during quarantine, we are glad you're here with us.
As you listen, we'd love to get your feedback on topics you're interested in hearing about, or even an employee you would enjoy hearing from. Please feel free to email us at uwmg@utsnacks.com.
Al escuchar, nos encantaría obtener sus comentarios sobre los temas que estén interesados en escuchar, o tal vez conocen un empleado que disfrutarían escuchar en este podcast. No dude en enviarnos un correo electrónico a uwmg@utsnacks.com.
Welcome to our podcast, Rewind, Pause, Play with UTS Women's Mentoring Group. If you've been here before, thank you for returning to listen to our latest podcast. If you are new here, welcome and thank you for joining. We hope that you will go back and listen to our previous episode. This will be a 2-part episode, so we hope you enjoy part 1 and return for part 2. We're very excited about today's guest, our CEO, Dylan Lissette. After our first episode, and of course, a few emails later, we were able to see a glimpse into Dylan's backstory and couldn't pass up the opportunity to bring him on to share his journey with all of you. Let's start with where we're at today. We're sitting in the boardroom of UTS Brands in Hanover, Pennsylvania. 100-year-old publicly traded company with over $1 billion in sales and more than 3,300 employees across the country. This is rather different than 26 years ago when you started here in mail order outlet store with roughly $105 million in sales and no computers or email. In order to get to where we are today as an organization, change was necessary. And it's quite evident as we read through your background that you're confident in leading through the change. Tell us a little bit about your journey to get to where you're sitting today.
Sure. You're 100% right. In 1995, I think it was November 13th, I joined the company because I had just gotten married the year before, October 1st of 1994. I had 2 kids on the way. They were due in May or June. I was very young. Can't remember exactly how old I was, but I was born in 1971. I was married in 1994, and I had 2 kids on the way in 1996. I was very young, and I really didn't have a good paying job. I had been a bartender. I had worked at a liquor store. I had worked at a law firm, library, all while going to George Washington University. And I had these twins coming on the way, and we were living outside of Washington, D.C., and I can't remember exactly what I was making, but I wasn't making a lot of money. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to figure out how to either connive my wife's father into giving me a job, or I'm probably going to have to find a job somewhere else because I need to make more money. I got 2 kids on the way. And so, luckily, sometime over that summer and fall of 1995, I met with Stacy, my wife's dad, Mike Rice, and I said, Mike, hey, I'm down in D.C. and I've got these great management training opportunities that are coming my way with this company I'm working for. You had to put air quotes around that because I was kind of talking up my job at the time, and I said, if you want me to, not move to Canada or Boston or somewhere with these grandkids, you probably ought to give me a job. And Mike, to his credit, said, okay, I'll give you a job, but it's going to have to be at the lowest level in the organization as possible. Now, you got to remember in 1995 that, the company in my mind was relatively small. However, it was still a $100 million business in 1995. It was a big company. So there were a lot of people, there were plants, there were routes, there were operations. And so I eventually convinced him to give me a job. I said, I would prefer not to be a route salesperson. I would prefer not to do that. I would prefer to be inside somewhere. And luckily, I got teamed up with Joanne Corrier, who's Jack Corrier's wife, and she was working in the outlet store at the time. And they had a small mail order department. I always say it was the first internet, of snacks, because they had a mail order call-in sort of service where they shipped out product. And I just sort of got thrown into that. And that was in late 1995. There were no laptops. There was no email. I came from a company where we had a laptop and we had email. It was called Lotus Notes at the time, if anybody remembers that. And it was really interesting. It was quite a culture shock for me to kind of come here and put myself into this new office. I think it actually used to be FX Rice's, Mike Rice's dad's office over at Carlisle Street. So it was this old wood panel, big office, and really majestic, and this huge monster desk. And I remember sort of sitting there thinking, okay, well, this is probably essentially the first day of the rest of my life. What am I going to do now? And I've got to I'm the in-law, right? I'm the or the outlaw, right? I'm the guy who married the owner's daughter, and now we gotta do something important, or people are going to think I'm only here, because. Did
you feel like you had a lot to prove?
Oh yeah, like straight out of it. I mean, right out of the gate. It's funny, and one of the guys is still here at Utz, and so I'll say his first name, but I won't say his last name, but he'll appreciate the story because I've said it directly to him. But there was a period of time somewhere like a year or two after I was here, and I think we had asked for something to get done, and this gentleman goes, well, Dylan's not my boss. If his wife asks me, I'll do it. But if Dylan asks me, I ain't doing it. And so, yeah, you sort of have that built in, like, okay, who's the new kid, married to the daughter of the, owner, what's he doing? How's he doing it? Is he going to do it well? I mean, so you sort of had to live with that, every day. But, I think you see, and you saw a little bit of my history. I did learn to adapt over time to different situations. And so I just took it as a challenge to try to do what I always do, which is, I'm going to win, and hopefully somebody else is going to lose, but I'm going to win in that process, and I'm going to be a winner, and I'm going to, do my best to prevail in whichever way possible. And that's what it guided the next 26 years of, as you say, sitting here in, the nice conference room of a $1 billion plus, annual, business, and we're a public company. We've lasted over 100 years as a company, and I was part of it for 25 of those 100 years.
And if you briefly touch on your journey, so you started in mail order, where did you go next until you got to CEO? Kind of what was your path there?
I was in mail order. I remember starting the our Yahoo website for e-commerce. I was there, and I think we changed things. We upgraded things. We put technology in. I mean, it's just simple things I thought along the way too that were very pro customer, and we're more oriented to, like, changing the game. Like, there was never music in the outlet store, and I was like, people don't want to stand here shopping, looking around like, why is everybody staring at me? They want to hear background music, so we had to put background music in. And so we just did a lot of things there. And I was there about 3 years. And then I really sort of was like, okay, let me start assessing where I'm at. I've been here for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. I'm doing the same thing. I've been improving at what I'm doing. Where else within the organization, should I go? And I think it maybe relays a little bit to your conversation with Shannon recently. And, I had to go forward and say, I'm ready for my next role. I'm ready for the next position. And so ended up coming down to High Street. I remember it was a little office downstairs, right where the walkway is from the street. That's next to the little kitchen. Mm-hmm. And I sort of shared the kitchen with my office, and I went down there and I started doing, I think it was a director of marketing position to work on pricing, promotions, bag designs, things like that that you work on in marketing. And then just kind of like, I think I kind of got my groove then and kind of did that for a couple of years. And then I don't know how many years later, but it was like, VP of marketing and I think that part of the success that I had over that time frame, because we were growing as an organization a lot. I mean, it was almost like invariably, yep, we're going to grow. How much are we going to grow? We're going to expand geography, or we're going to, get into new areas of snacking or something. And we were growing and growing. But I felt like I was moving faster personally in my career, but also for the company, because I was willing to change and I was willing to question. And I was willing to offer creative ideas and solutions and things like that and put them forth. And I didn't have any fear of that, which is interesting, right? And then you say, well, how do you not have any fear? I think part of that is my individual upbringing.
Yes.
But I think part of that is being connected to the family and the way I was connected, because it gives you a sense of not I can do anything, because that's dangerous, right? I can do anything. If you think you can do anything, it's dangerous. You can't walk out in front of a car, you're going to get hit.
Right.
Like you can't do stupid things. But having that sense that I can do anything, right? I can question anything. I can rethink anything. Well, why are we doing this? What if we did this? How about doing this? And so I think that helped me, and I think helped the organization, because there was somebody at that lower level who had that spirit, but also understanding of ability to change. And I think that helped the organization also grow. And then it expanded into other operations roles, where I was doing marketing plus, some of like the old Don Hartlaub stuff, which was, running the, oversight of the certain regions of the company. Maybe it was the Eastern Shore, then it was Chesapeake or Richmond or Manassas or Waldorf, and, all of these different distribution centers. And so through that, like, really long process of work, and working like literally, I'm still there, unfortunately, but working, 15, 16, 18 hours a day at any given time, you touched a lot of people, right? You met lots of people in the field. You met lots of, people in the key account staff, right? You get really close with the Larry Racy's, the Les Irvings, the Jack Lansmans of the world on the sales side, right? The guys, Gary Little and Jim Little, and, all of these names and people, Joe Guardian, and, people who have been around for a long time, Steve Leontonio, and you really built up a relationship of trust that was two-way, but it was also relatively honest. Like, I would get a text or a call out, WTF, what are you thinking, right? And then I'd answer, and we'd kind of, but there was always a sort of sense of, I thought from the outside that, okay, this guy is who he is, related to the family he is, but he's succeeding because of what he does. And I'm connecting to him as his, coworker or whatever, purely based on us mutually trying to find success. Driven organization for success, for winning, throw politics aside, drive the business.
I want to touch on a couple of things that you just mentioned. So first, the willingness to change. I said a couple of times that we looked at your, got to read your backstory and your background. What are some of those points in your life where those things really helped you become kind of the person you are now? The willingness to change, the idea generator, the creativity, those types of things. And really, I think some of your background too, it was common themes of resilience, independence, street smarts. You got all of that from various things throughout your past. I want you to touch on a couple of those points where you think were like pivotal to bring you to where you are. And I think that leads into really what you just touched on and how you can connect with the employees, because you are detail oriented. You do have the ideas that you're throwing to other folks in the organization. They feel like you're more of a coworker versus maybe a CEO reaching all of these different folks.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where it started, because I go back. There's, I'll often say I have an identical twin brother, so that's something important to kind of get out, because when I mean identical, like identical, identical looking, identical acting, identical speaking. We're probably within 3 pounds of each other at age 49, right? Like we're just genetically very, very similar. I think that is an interesting thing for anybody to grow up with because there's not many people who do that. And when you're really close, it also means, we're men, right? We're males. We're also very competitive. So I think there's like a competitive streak that kind of underlaid like a lot of things, but you learn that really young. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, we were never good in sports. Like I think I'm athletic, but we were not good in sports. Like that wasn't our thing. We weren't football players. Maybe we messed around with Little League or something like that, but we were never sports guys. If you ask us sports questions, and I mean both of us, we're going to always say the wrong name for the wrong quarterback for the wrong NFL team, or mix up a hockey team with a basketball team. Like we don't know our sports at all.
Right.
But we were very competitive against each other, but in a good sense, not cutthroat. So I think that drove sort of some of the mindset. I think we were very poor when we were very young. My dad, he was. I remember, I have a sort of a gray block or blackout in my mind, so I've written down some of these dates to try to figure them out. But way back in the day, we lived in Cape Cod in Massachusetts, in a town called Falmouth, and my dad was, the janitor at what was called the casino, which is basically a nightclub or a restaurant or something on the beach, and that was his job. And, I don't think my mother worked, and I think we were, pretty darn, poor. I mean, I don't think we had a lot, and they divorced. We bounced around. My mother was gonna. Funny story. There are pictures to prove this. She loaded us all in this yellow school bus because we were going to drive across the country and start over in California. And I think the school bus broke down like a mile from the house. And, it's like being a kid and packing your bag and running away and
then turning around and coming back. Yeah.
And because of technical difficulties. And so, I think like that background and, but, through the years, I mean, we lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We lived in a co-op, which is an apartment building.
You lived in Venezuela and went to a Spanish-speaking school.
I forgot about Venezuela, but I lived in Venezuela for a year. I went to a Spanish-speaking school, and my brother and I did not even know a word of Spanish, but we went to Spanish school every day for like a year. We did a lot of dictado on the board with the teacher said, okay, time for dictado. We could do that. And we could just write down what was said, on the board. We bounced around there. I mean, there's a funny story there where my mother couldn't afford to bring everybody home from Venezuela at once. So she but she arranged for me to stay there with a friend of the family out in like the middle of Venezuela on a farm. Quintessential farm in the middle of Venezuela for like an extra 4 or 5 weeks until she could get enough money to wire it down to somehow take a plane back through Curacao from Venezuela to, then we have these pictures of driving around in this old, orange Jeep and, going to the corner store and, getting robbed in the middle of the night and seeing the guy and, all this, crazy stories that are in the back of my brain. Mm-hmm. And I think every time that we went to Boston, we went to Massachusetts, we went to Dover, Sherburne, we were living in Natick, we were with people, and then we went to the Cape, and she got remarried again, and
So you were used to, there was a lot of changes, and at this point, you were still very young when all of this stuff you just mentioned happened.
Sure, this all happened before I was probably a freshman in high school.
Right.
So, we ended up in Cape Cod, and I do remember, which is really probably one of the more defining moments of life, perhaps, was we had gone down to Washington, D.C. We were with my stepfather at the time, my mother's third husband, my stepfather at the time, and we had gone to the House of Representatives, or maybe the U.S. Senate, both. We went to the House of Representatives and U.S. Senate, and in one of the elevators, there was a young man in a blue suit, and he had a little name tag on, And I like looked at, he looked young, and I looked at my stepfather at the time, and I said, what's this guy? Like, what's his deal? And he's like, oh, he's a page. And I'm like, what's a page? And he told me what a page is. A page works in Washington, D.C. And I'm like, wow, I may actually want to do that. So went home, however, back in 1986, I guess I was a sophomore at the time, went home to Falmouth, Mass, and wrote our U.S. Senator, which was Massachusetts, Ted Kennedy from Massachusetts, wrote him and said I wanted to be a page, and filled out an application and did my history or whatever story, and got a thing in the mail and said, you're now a U.S. page, and you're going to start in August of 1987 at the United States Senate. You'll be a senator, So long story short, but so I get like dropped off in the back of a micro VW bus from a friend who happened to be driving to Charlottesville. This is what happened back in 1987.
Oh my gosh,
right?
yeah.
Like, oh, can you just drop off my 16-year-old son in DC with his duffel bag at this page school? Like, my parents just didn't bring me. I mean,
Right.
Why would they bring you?
Much different than today.
Yeah, today it's like, oh, honey, you're going to school. I'm going to pack everything for you. I'm going to bring you there. I'm going to pick you up.
Right.
And, give you money. And I mean, I got dropped off with no money, no cell phone, no, a bag and like a cheap blue suit with a white shirt. That was it. And so I ended up, going in the very first day into the Senate cloakroom. Like 40 of us, right, coming in our blue suits and little blue ties and white shirts, and all of us like deer in a headlight, and seeing all these senators around, and we're in the middle of the United States Senate chamber cloakroom, and this guy, his name was Bob Bean, and he was the head of the cloakroom, and he like catches me, grabs me, pulls me to the side, and he goes, take this book, memorize all these names, like pictures, names. I'm like, okay. So I go into like this little booth, and I flip through. I learned like 10 senators' names maybe in like 8 minutes. Ford was the senator then.
Right.
A whole bunch of them. And John Glenn was a senator. The astronaut was a senator at the time. So I like looked at all these things. We come back out about 8 minutes later. He goes, okay, we're going to have a trivia thing. Whoever gets the most senators is the head page. And, I of course knew 10 and everybody else knew 1 because this guy pulled me aside.
Right.
So it's funny how life, like, you have these weird things, you go after them, you want them, you get them, and then, somebody pulls you along, like,
right.
somewhere, somehow. The next thing you know, you're the head page. And the head page is supposed to be for a semester. So it's only supposed to be like 3 months.
Okay.
And everybody had to go home and a new batch came in. Well, I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm 16 years old. I've got a paycheck because they paid pages like 15 grand a year. I got a paycheck. The drinking age just turned 21. I'm in the bars like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday with all my peeps from page school, learning at 16 how to be a 21-year-old, learning how to tip, learning how to come in early, before they ID you, get big tips. Make friends so you can get into bars, right? Because, you wear a suit, look the part, play the part, come in, do the right thing, and, but we're supposed to go home. So I work a meeting with Senator Byrd, the head Senate, chamber leader from West Virginia at the time. And I sit here at a long conference table just like this, and I tell him I really want to stick around for another semester. And could I be his page instead of, Kennedy's page for, and like a week later, I got a yes. So I spent my entire year there. So it's defining because you're professionalized really fast.
Right.
You learn to speak to, Senator Dick Shelby from Alabama at 16 or 17 years old, like your peers. Not your subordinates or, your peers, you're helping each other out. And you kind of get, introduced to the world. And then at that point, I said, well, I'm not going home to Massachusetts. So I went to New Orleans and went to a Jesuit boarding school in New Orleans for a year, outside of New Orleans in Mississippi.
Wow. And the Jesuit school was when you were a senior in high school, I think is what I read. And then I believe after that you became a commercial fisherman for the summer. So people are going to think
this is made up. I think some of the things that you're saying, and we were saying you need to write a book about this, because all of these, and obviously all of these events that happened to you, and even at a young age, I mean, all these things we're discussing is before you even graduated or even went to college, before you graduated high school. So obviously that's made you the person that you are today. And I think, you know, I was reading some of the quotes that you had on the document that you sent over, and there were a couple that had similar themes about not having a plan B and falling forward. And that kind of follows your background too. You just kept going to the next and the next and the next thing that kept taking you to the next adventure, or that, you know, obviously led your path here, but all of those things kind of build up to where and who you are now today. And I want to hear comments on, you know, I'll just, you know, do a couple of these quotes. Don't have a plan B, don't have a fallback plan, only fall forward. We function better if there's no safety net. If you live your life with a plan B, you're cutting yourself off from the chance of really succeeding. People would create a plan B because they're afraid of failing. And a lot of your background just seemed like that's really what you were doing, is doing that fall forward.
Well, think about it. Like if you waste a lot of time thinking, I don't want to do because this, whatever this is. Well, I don't want to apply to become a page. I'm going to miss my friends. I don't want to apply. What's the living conditions down there? Like, are they 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartments? How much money do you actually get paid? If you put all of that aside and say, oh my God, I have an opportunity. If I fail, I fail. They don't pick me. I won't know any better. But if I don't try, then, I definitely will fail, right? And it's funny, like even when we think about all of the years, all of the things that we've done, especially since like 2010. I mean, the multitude of deals, and integrations, and brands, and effort and work, and we're all sitting here today, and it's kind of has come together. A lot of that could have been, it could have not happened if you kind of let into your mind that let's not do it because of all the things that may go wrong.
Or even I don't want to ask because I might get a no.
Right.
Well, at that point, what does it matter if you get a no? Maybe you'll get a yes, and you can end up.
But why not?
Right.
I mean,
why not?
You mentioned, and this is again before I even went to college, being a commercial fisherman off of the coast of Boston and Woodsole and Cape Cod. I was sold as a fishing job. I'm thinking, okay, I'm on my way to college. It's summer. I'm in decent shape. I'm going to take my shirt off. I'm going to flex. I'm going to get tan. I'm going to work all day. I'm not going to eat much because I'm going to be ripped. Like I had I signed up without doing one lick of research. I don't even know if Google existed back then, 1989. But I didn't do a lick of research. I was just like, okay, I'll be a commercial fisherman. Let's go. And get on the boat, and by the way, there's no sun or anything 15, 20 miles out into the ocean, or whatever we were, 50 miles in the ocean. There's no sun. It's only rocky or wavy and misty and cloudy and windy. And we worked 8 hours, slept 4, worked 8, slept 4, worked 8, slept 4, worked 8, slept 4 for an entire 6-day trip. And then we came back, and it was very
quite different than what you expected.
And I got off that boat and I said, I am not going on a second trip. And about a day and a half later, because we always had like 2 days of downtime after being exhausted, and I'm like, no, I promised the guy. And I went on for I think I did 7 trips that summer.
Oh, wow.
Of 6 days each,
yeah.
42 days at sea doing that work, back to back to back. But I never would have done it if I had thought too much, if I had, and there's a benefit to that, and there can be a negative to that, right? But it's, you do, I think, listening to your gut and really understanding, like, that seems like something I shouldn't do, then you shouldn't do it, right? But if it seems more like it's something I should do, I'm just worried about doing it, not because it has a negative impact, but because it might change my life a little bit for the worse. It might hurt me, we got to move forward, right? And we got to go forward. Life's too short. Friday comes every week, mm-hmm. and Monday comes again 2 days later. Like it's, the cycle is what it is. And so I think my mindset, just through whatever means, has always sort of mentally been that way. And I think I'm probably supported by an identical twin brother who, as soon as I complain about something, he's on the other end, giving me the same exact positive feedback. Like, come on, dude, you can do this. And you're like, you know what? You're right. I can. And we,
feed off of each other.
Pick up each other's, and that really helps. I mean, having somebody to, support from that, or having a family that supports you, of course, to do it as well.
Right. And I think some of what you were saying was about the ideas that you may have written down and the things that we could be doing, and you may get the answer of no, we can't do that, but at least you're asking the question and you're throwing out all of these ideas, which kind of sounds like, what we were just talking about, the things that you learned, the fall forward and not fall back. Is there more that we can do, or is there a different way of doing it? And I think in some cases where you started at the organization also helps you see the detail or the broader picture of some things. Instead of maybe coming right in from college and you end up in maybe a VP role or whatever that might be, kind of help you see the business and what goes into the day-to-day operations. Would you agree that really helps generate some of the ideas that you have and so on?
Yeah, if we go back in time and we had you may not remember the name, but people will, Vaughn Kegare, and Vaughn was just an amazing programmer, been here forever, worked with Larry Reindaler and, Todd Staub and, and everyone. And I think he had because he was a programmer. Programmers are usually, I think, people who think they can do anything, right? Give me a problem, I can program something around that, right? Programmers have a cool mind because they're built for solving things algorithmically, right? X minus the divide, and this keys off this process. And so he and I would, there's so many things through the years that we would just sit there and say why are we doing it this way? Things that have been in place for a very long time, why are we doing it this way? And, and the good thing is there were a lot of people around the company that did that. But I still think even today, in any organization, especially us, we're still bridled by people who don't, it's you think about Elon Musk, that dude is out there, he sees things around the corner and unlocks ideas, right? His mind is doing that. I don't think, I don't know anybody, including myself, that's anywhere close to that, but it's having the ability to say, why are we doing that? Contracts, we used to write the contracts onto a carbon piece of paper by hand and turn them into Jim Reiser, and Jim Reiser would enter them into a computer database like the S400 green screen for DSD pricing contracts. So it's well, why do we do that? Why don't we just have people enter them directly into the system themselves?
Right.
I would call, we got guys in Richmond, Virginia trying to enter contracts. They had to send it up in the inner office mail to get Jimmy, who has to sit there with his stack of contracts. Let's just enter the stuff directly. But that's really simple, right? But why are we doing it, right? We just came up with a thing recently in HR, which I think is kind of interesting because it's a testament to pivoting too, right? The texting concepts that we use now for HR, we started that texting sort of platform thing for a totally different area of the business. It had nothing to do with HR. It had to do with sales. We started for sales. It was going to be this thing where people could text. It just didn't quite work there, right? But then we pivoted in the last 3 months or 6 months to using it in HR, and just kind of did it on a dime and just kind of started doing it. And then we kind of get into some social digital stuff with HR, and now we've really unlocked some opportunities in HR using some technology that literally we had created 6, 7, 8 months ago for something totally different, but we're using it today. But people having that, why? Why, Casey? Why are we doing this?
And surrounding yourself with others that think, similarly, that what can we do better? What can we do more efficiently? What's out there that want to?
We literally come out of there going oh my God, my life is better because regardless if I personally benefit from it or whatever, my life is better because we did something. We fixed something that was stupid, or we fixed something that was just old, or we fixed something that was, right? I mean, I can still remember there's an old funny story where certain people don't embrace technology and some of the changes, and it was It was Larry Racy, and we moved from flip phones to Blackberries. And I was like, Larry, when we move these Blackberries, they've got a calendar, they've got email, they've got contacts. He's like, I have my Joe book, I have my Black Calendar book, and and I don't do emails or something. This is only like 10 or 15 years ago. And it's like, Larry, you got to do this. I mean, this is where everybody's going. And he's like, I'm not doing it. Please, Larry, for 2 weeks, do it. Do it for 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, all right, Larry, give me back that phone. Nope. No way, man. No way. This was a lifesaver, right? Because so sometimes it's like, you have a new thing, you got to try it out, you got to give it a chance. And,
which we're experiencing now through our new ERP. And
Sure.
There's been a lot of changes in the past, even since February, since we went live. There's a lot of changes, change management. There's a lot of new things going on, especially within technology. Even through COVID, we've learned that we have to pivot to do more online sales. People are buying online more than they're maybe shopping in the store. So how can we pivot and go the direction of our consumer and even our employees and so on?
We really enjoyed learning about how Dylan navigates through change and how his history contributed to those skills. Tune in to part 2 to learn more about Dylan's leadership methods and things he's learned being CEO.
Thank you for listening to Rewind, Pause, Play with the UTS Women's Mentoring Group. Please feel free to email us at uwmg@utsnacks.com for any questions or comments. We hope you enjoyed this podcast.